မင်္ဂလာပါကိုစရာဟုတ်ကဲ့
ဟုတ်ကဲ့မင်္ဂလာပါကိုဆိုရအဲ့တော့ကိုဆိုရရဲ့
Thank you for taking the time to check out the Insight Myanmar podcast. If you like what you hear, we'd be very grateful if you would consider rating, reviewing, and or sharing this podcast. Every little bit of feedback helps. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Insight Myanmar podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcasts. If our feed is not in your podcast player, please let us know and we'll assure it can be offered there. I'm really pleased on this edition of Insight Myanmar to be welcoming Soeya Min. So Soeya Min, thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
So like so many of us, especially in Myanmar, your life was so different pre-coup, pre-pandemic. And I understand that you had varied roles as a travel agent, a recording artist, event organizer. Can you tell us a little bit about those activities and where you were hoping to go before the world started closing in with the pandemic and then the coup?
All right. Okay. As a travel agent, I work for like 5 to 6 years, and then I wasn't really a recording artist. I switched to I wanted to do events, those EDM events, and then while I was in travel industry, I wanted to that kind of events are related to traveling and stuff, right? So I gained more interested in that, and I wanted to do something in that event industry. And then I found some artists, and then I started working with them. I tried to promote shows, and then I become a artist manager, and also I started doing we started doing how to say like a production house, and then I always have how to say I'm always interested in music business since I was young. My dream was to have my own studio since like 10th or I think around 10th grade or after 10th grade. I always told my friends that one day I wanted my own recording studio and stuff. So when I have the chance to do those things, I moved towards it, and it was I started doing those things back in like 2018, 17, 18, end of 17, around there. Started working with the artists and become and then I aim to have my own record label, and we were going in that direction before the coup. Even in the pandemic, we how to say we've found ways. We find ways to survive through it, and when the coup happens, I know it. Entertainment industry is how to say uh, without people having ease of their mind or having extra income to spend on entertainment. Our industry is, it will be the propaganda uh, for the for for the military government. So will become the propaganda machine for the a military government. So I don't and then I wanted to help people. So that's why and I'm always helping people, giving advice, listening to people, because I have I was helping a lot of young artists, and I'm always listening, and I'm always giving advice. That's why. And then so that's when I started interested in psychology, because when I deal with a lot of these young artists and other people, I talk to a lot of people, then I find that okay, why people have different view, different perspective, different thinking for uh, same events and same uh, how to say, same stimulation from outside, but it's the same event, but people have different perspective. And then I that's why I started to interested in psychology. And then when coup happened, I switched. I wanted to help people, but to be honest, with for many reasons, I couldn't join. I joined protesting, like going out in the street in the first few weeks, but for various reasons, I couldn't like join PDF or stuff like that. So I wanted to help people and make how to say, I want to make a difference. So that's why I started doing taking courses in mental health counseling. And then yeah, also with my friends, I founded the Take That Duka mental health counseling service.
Yeah, so that's a lot there. So let's go into some of those different aspects that you bring up. And when you talk about some of the work you were doing in recording, it's certainly multifaceted in bringing voices, music, entertainment, information out on recording. And that being said, I know that appearing on a podcast like this is no new thing for you. In fact, you have your own podcast platform. It's called Opinions and Thoughts. And
Yeah,
on that, you interview this wide range of guests. And I should mention this is in Burmese language.
yeah.
What made you want to start a podcast? And actually, when did you start? Was it before the coup, during the pandemic, or was it before?
During the pandemic. Yeah. What okay, this might sound cliche or something. I During pandemic, I would listen to a lot of uh that was so how to say, I have a lot of free time during the pandemic, because no events, nothing, no touring, no nothing, right? So um I'm just at home thinking what to do next, and looking for uh you know uh how to say, looking for new stuff to read, new stuff to learn through the internet. And then once I go through YouTube, like lectures and talks and stuff like that, I found okay, Sam Harris podcast. And then and then I found Jordan Peterson, and then I found Joe Rogan, um, and also other stuff, other like comedy podcasts and through YouTube. So yeah, that's what that's what gives me the motivation to start my own podcast. And then because I thought, oh, okay, this is some kind of new thing, and at that time, like the biggest one was Joe Rogan. I think he was getting millions of views on YouTube and stuff like that. So I wanted to start my own, because I also have these, how to say, oh, this is cool. We can exchange ideas and talk freely, and it doesn't have to be like a formal talk show or anything. It just you can express freely, and and it's also a long form conversation. And all the other interviews and stuff are more like a scripted, and they have like time limit. That's why I started my own podcast, because I have a lot of connections, both in business side, also the artist people. So that's why I started my own thing. Yeah, and that because literally I have nothing else to do. I can. That's the only okay. This is what I
Yeah.
can do with, like, just sit. Even if there is no guest, I can like go on rant, and first
Mhm.
off, my first two episode was just me talking about movies, just like that. Yeah.
Right. That's really interesting. I think we share a love. Both of us probably share a love of appreciating podcasts as a listener and liking it so much as a consumer that we both went on to look at how we can actually be on the other side. What I'm curious about, though, is podcasting in Myanmar. And of course, I've had a podcast in Myanmar also pre-coup, pre-pandemic as well. Although mine was in English, and so it was hitting a slightly different audience. Yours is in Burmese language. So can you tell us a bit about what's the status, what's the state of podcasting in Myanmar? And I would put a frame on it of like the last 2 years, because I think the pandemic and the coup have both impacted local industries and life patterns in such tremendous ways.
I don't know about other podcast creators, how are they doing on it. But for me, most of my listeners are not from not local, not from Myanmar. Um, Myanmar is second, I guess, and first is, yeah, of course, United States. Listenerships, how to say, there are a lot of like people start play, and through the analytics of Apple Podcasts and Spotify. What I notice is, if it's like too long, they don't finish it. Most of the listeners don't finish it. Like 15 minutes to 20 minutes. That's the highest retention rate. That is what I see. And then I I'm not sure if there is a lot of people listening to podcasts right now, because I think most of my target audience is having a lot of some maybe don't have internet connections anymore, or some are in the you know uh, some are taking arms, because what I targeted was young people, like 20 to 35. That was my intended target audience. So most of them are now, maybe some are as I said before, maybe in the areas that don't have like good connection to internet, or some are in the uh, PDF and stuff. Yeah, and yeah, most of my listeners are from United States. That's the data show. Yeah, I don't know. Now I see a lot of creators are starting their own, because as you know, after the coup, Jabal started. Jabal, the famous singer from Big Bang band.
Mm-hmm.
He started
Right,
his
right.
own. He started his own podcast, and when he started, there was a bump, and then after that, I don't see much changes. Yeah, but on YouTube, a lot of my videos are now having more views within last 2 months. Yeah. Yeah.
So another interesting thing about podcasts is they're just a different form of media, and even though they are unscripted, they could be casual. It could be a 18-year-old kid just talking in his basement about video games. Even if it's that, it's still media. It's some form of media, and this is
Mm-hmm.
especially interesting when you look at Myanmar today, where the conventional forms of media are under so much duress. There has been so much pressure and terror on those actual journalists from the local media, as well as local staff members of international media trying to report on the story. And so as we look at the difference between this kind of conventional media and the potential role that podcasts could be playing as a more modern, lighter, perhaps even safer form of media, depending on how it's administered, I think it's interesting to look at the difference between what a more traditional form of media can do and the role that podcasts can play. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. In the United States or other like Western countries, I think podcasts like replace radio and other stuff. But in our country, I think people are not used to it because this is just two people talking, and they are sharing stories, sharing experiences, sharing their opinions, stuff like that. So people are not really used to it. They are just okay. This is what is this? They are still new to this, and yeah, a lot of like who have exposure to the big podcast platforms like in other countries, they are used to they know what it is. But in our country, most of them like, what is this? Why should I listen to just two people talking or maybe one people just talking? Why can't I just listen to some audiobook, or why can't I just listen to some uh some monks how to say explaining the Dhamma, stuff like that. So people are like still testing it, and for conventional media, people are not consuming it at all. I think that's what I see. They are just using Facebook. They're just watching Facebook videos, TikTok videos. I think it will take a little more, maybe 1 or 2 more years to get the local uh, audience to get accustomed to this kind of media or this kind of format. Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my question. Actually, what do you think it will take? I think that any media and any culture kind of has a turning point where a critical mass, even if it's a small number, just start to see like, oh, this media can do this. Oh, I can consume it this way, and I can gain this from being able to take that media in. So what do you think it will take to turn the corner in the podcasting industry in Myanmar, where suddenly, not that it's going to be consumed by everyone, it's not consumed by everyone in America. There's many Americans who've never listened to a podcast, but there can be some kind of critical turn where it goes from a very small listenership to something a bit more sizable. So what do you think might could bring that shift, where it could bring that interest and make it something that starts to inform the public discourse, and people start to there start to be kind of brands and personalities and topics that some percentage, a little higher than now, start to consume and be interested in?
Yeah, I think we need more quality content on the podcasting side also, because there's only a few how to say there's only it's only a handful, not there's not podcasts are not like me regularly putting out stuff, some like do 2 or 3 episodes and then they just disappear for a few months and then they came back. What you have to do is you have to on the creator side, you have to believe in it and like just keep putting out more content, more quality content, more. Yeah, just try to put out more and with good quality, of course. I think that will change. That will change it, and also, how to say, a little bit more personalities and like uh doing other people podcasts, like me doing your podcast, and you doing mine.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of like
Sure.
cross, yeah, that kind of thing has to grow naturally. And when they say, oh, there's a community there, what are they talking about, you
Mm.
know? And if they find, oh,
Hmm.
these people are communicating with each other, and there's going across platforms and topics, and stuff like that happens, and it will get more attraction, and then people will be more curious. I think that's need to happen. That's why I try to reach out a lot of other podcasts, and then
Mm.
I'm always like asking,
Hmm.
oh, yo, can I be on your? You can be. That's what I'm trying to do. You know.
Yeah, that's great, and I appreciate you reaching out as well with that. And I think that I do think that there's a certain kind of excitement in the potential of a podcast industry. This is what I was first thinking of. This is the term that came to my mind initially? Is this kind of this nascent Burmese podcast industry that can take off in both Burmese and English, that is able to bring this kind of media and platform concerning issues related to Myanmar. And I think one of the reasons why it's so important to me is I think that there's this real misconception going back many decades of a very simplistic, one-dimensional story of what Myanmar is and who the Burmese people are. And I think podcasts have the ability to break down that narrative and to be able to expose and expand on how colorful and dynamic and interesting so many aspects of Myanmar culture are, depending on the directions that you go. Um, as I've thought about this further, I think a podcast industry is not quite the word I'd use. A word that's come to mind since has been ecosystem, that there needs to be a kind of podcast ecosystem that's developed where there are, as you mentioned, there are different podcasts that are doing different things. And I think that's really key. No one is trying to copy what someone else is doing and just trying to do the same thing, but the style, the personality, the topics, the guests, the dynamic, the feel, all of that is very unique and specialized to what they're trying to do. And I think that if there a further ecosystem developing of different podcasters appearing on other platforms, sharing guests, sharing resources, promotions, audience, all of that, I think that's a chance of lifting the whole industry, if you want to call it that, the whole ecosystem off where it's at now. And it can, whether it's in Burmese or English, if it's in Burmese, then it's doing a great job of being able to inform the conversation among a local audience and expand and provide more nuance and detail and color. If it's in another language and not Burmese, English or some other language outside the country, then it's doing a service of being able to bring and share stories to people that would not normally have access, and to characters and anecdotes and history that those interested in the country living outside and being foreigners can start to learn and appreciate to a deeper level. So I just think there's so much potentiality and good that can be done from this ecosystem starting to support itself and rise up.
That is I agree with that. That's but I'm not saying most of Burmese people are a little bit shy. That's maybe that's that's the word you can describe it, because uh podcasting is like oh, if I say something wrong, you know what, because
Mm-hmm.
even when I started, I have to, even the celebrities that I invited over, uh, author or writers, they know what they are talking, and then they don't have problem like having a
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But some artists and some
Mm-hmm.
personalities, they have like, oh, what if I say something wrong, what if I do, I, I I mean, it's just relax, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, how to say, uh maybe you have to show your true self. Some celebrities.
Yeah.
I'm not saying not everyone, but some celebrities they put on a facade. They put on an image for their audience. So when when
Sure.
when when I introduce this kind of conversation type of back and forth, and talking about things, and they find it a little bit maybe intimidating, or and some are like, oh, even not the celebrity one, that just normal people, and who I find interesting, or who I find if they have whom I think they have something to share. When I ask them to do my podcast, or do my podcast, they are just like, oh, I don't want to like share this, or I don't want to talk about it.
Mm.
Uh, People need to be a little bit more open, also. Yeah. Uh, they afraid they will be judged, uh, for what for speaking their mind. I find it a little. I don't like it, because if you are like if you come from a place of honesty, and uh, people will forgive you. I think that's even if you make a mistake.
Yeah, that's really interesting. As you're saying this, some thoughts are coming to mind. One is that the first podcast I got into, this was actually before podcast existed. It's since become a podcast, but it was a radio show then. It was Fresh Air with Terry Gross by NPR, and I just fell in love with it. I had never, to this day, I'm not alone in saying I think she is the greatest interviewer that's ever lived in what she's able to do. But one of the things I really liked when I started listening, and her interviews are about 45 minutes long, and she would have all kinds of celebrities on, and not just scholars and political leaders, but also actors, athletes. And one of the things I found was that because her interviews were long enough, for 45 minutes, and because her questions were in depth, and she gave space and time for people to answer, the person that came on kind of had to reveal themselves, and they couldn't just do sound bites. They couldn't just give certain impressions of the way they want to appear, but it went under that. And sometimes you'd find celebrities that weren't really prepared for that, and after 10 or 15 minutes they had run through their normal way of giving impressions of how they want to be seen, and then they realized they ran out of those, and they had to move on to something more authentic. And that was one of the early things that really intrigued and inspired me to see how long form interviews would necessarily dig at being able to get into this more nuanced content that conventional media of, news hours or radio shows or newspapers just gave those sound bites, which could be so carefully cultivated. But once you get past a 15-minute mark in an interview, and especially once you get past an hour mark, you start to reveal who you really are, and what comes out. And the second thing that I was thinking when I was hearing what you were saying is I was thinking of Mark Maron's WTF podcast. And that's a pod. He also has many celebrities on. He had Obama on during his presidency, even though he records it literally like in his garage in suburban Los Angeles. And he literally has like celebrities like driving out to like his garage to record these podcasts. But his podcasts are like so emotional, and like just digging into like complexes and personal problems and failures and struggles and addiction and so much of that. And it's become kind of a known thing that if you're a celebrity if you decide to go on his show, you're going to talk about your shit. You're going to talk about your past. It's going to be kind of like a therapy session. And that's just, people know what they're getting into. And I think that plays into what you were saying about trying to bring people on to have some real talk, is that in some ways, like both Terry Gross and Mark Maron, they incentivize their guests to show, like, if you want to come on here, this is the kind of show we do. This is the expectation. No one is going to go on Mark Maron's show and expect to not talk about their childhood and their complexes. It just won't happen. Like, it just won't be a good interview, because that's what his platform is. And when I set up my platform before the pandemic, before the coup, but this motivation has been consistent since then, that was a real priority for me. I wanted to be known as a platform where I would be fair. I would take the time to understand the issues. We would be able to explore from different sides. We would have some real, vulnerable, intimate kind of talk about, to whatever degree the person wanted to bring that out, to be able to have a deeper understanding. And so I think that I totally understand what you're saying about this tendency of Burmese society. And in some ways, one of the counter questions I would have is, to what degree has this been changed since the coup? Because I've certainly seen this tendency start to be shifted, and this kind of care in how we talk and what we say. And I don't want to talk above my station, and I don't want to say something that's beyond what's appropriate for who I am and my place and role in this world. I think that those tendencies, to a large degree, have been wiped away, and as people realize they're in an end game of a life or death struggle, that the lid is kind of off, and people are, whether they're talking about, Sitagu Sayeda or other celebrities or generals that are in positions of power, that they're just freely dispensing their opinions. 21-year-old kids with no standing are just expressing how they feel about different things. That to some degree that lid is kind of off, and I think we see that cultural tendency kind of shifting before our eyes. So anyway, there's a lot there. I guess the question I would leave you with is this sense of like where are we at this moment in Burmese society, and where podcasting could fit in? How could the medium of podcasting in this kind of shifting, changing ground start to play a role where, and I understand these are different societies, but especially at this time where when you look at those examples of some of the ways that different podcasts can operate in American context, can there be a way to reward and incentivize that kind of sharing, even when the sharing doesn't make you look good, even when you're being so vulnerable that you're admitting to different, you're not this perfect polished person. But I think in many ways, that's what audiences crave, that kind of authenticity of seeing who these people really are rather than the person that they're aspiring to be and polishing themselves. So what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, it's shifting, and but it also depends on the audience, because now most of the whole country is going through misery and hardships and everything. So sometimes when they consume media, they want some entertainment, I guess. The white, or maybe some just makes them forget their hardships and problems and stuff. So it's grow in sudden, demographics that according to age, education levels and stuff like that. But I still think most people who's using internet or using social media or other consuming other forms of media, they still they just, most of them still want to to laugh, or to forget about the real world. So it's a bit it's growing, but not as much on as fast as I would want to be, because if if coup didn't happen, I'm sure podcasting will be like growing like a I don't know, wildflower during this time. I think because of the coup, it's shifted, because now most podcasts are like motivation, or or politics, focusing on those kind of stuff. Not a lot of stuff on like creatives, or other topics. Now it's mostly congested in politics and news, motivation, and those kind of stuff. That's what I think.
And how about your own particular podcast? You started this during the pandemic, and then the coup hit. I think when the coup happened, every platform, whether you were selling food or clothing or songs or whatever else, whatever the platform was, I think everyone had to suddenly look at, well, how can my platform and my background skills now play a role and meet this moment in a way that I can use these this place and this background to be able to support the democratic movement. And so, as the coup hit and the democratic resistance started to build up and be formed in Myanmar, what kinds of shifts or transformations did you make to your own podcast platform?
Yeah, I stopped for a while, and and then when I started, yeah, I try to bring on more guests that are more from political background and stuff. Because at that time, I think people need to hear what because at that time on the mainstream like on the mainstream conventional media or traditional media, uh, even on Facebook, right? All the posts are from just hardline NLD supporters or anti. All everything is anti junta, right? And other side is pro military. Only two sides, but I try to bring in people who have more of like that's criticizing the NUG and other stuff. Because I wanted to show the people that sometimes uh, it is true that junta is our main target, but you need to remember uh, what politics is, what politicians are thinking, and uh, the dirty works of politics. I don't want to get into it too much for here, but I want to show there is something you have to. Some people are just like how to say, oh, I support NLD, I support NUG, but when we try to point out the mistakes, they are all when we have different opinions about what they are doing, those people are getting like cyberbully or label as Allah and stuff. So I try to bring in nuance. That's what I try to do doing it. And then now after 1 year of doing those kind of stuff, I'm a little bit back to uh, more of a diversified guests. I try to talk to uh, how to say people that writes about science and physics and stuff on Facebook, and also try to interview more artists. Yeah, that's now I'm a bit back to what I started before the coup. Yeah, that's the changes I made, and I a bit back to, but I'll be more focused on political issues like 60%, and all other stuff or only 40%. Yeah, that's what I when the coup hit, all my everything was 100% like for this politics. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I think that you talk about the need for nuance, that it's not just a one dimensional NLD versus Tamada, but there's these deeper things to look at. And I think that's also really the value of what a long form podcast discussion brings, is that you're able to have that nuance in whatever direction and whatever kind of guest you want to go with, and take the time necessary to explore those matters. And I appreciate the shift you made. I think it's been similar for me. At the time the coup hit, we had a dozen episodes that were in various stages of production. We had a few episodes, some really good ones that were finished and were ready to be released. But when the coup happened, we just shelved everything, and we went into trying to tell those stories as urgently as possible. And we've also reached a point a year into this where I think telling the stories about what's happening on the ground among leadership, different analyses, those are definitely things we're going to pursue, and they're really going to be the main subject matter that we carry over. I would put it, well, I don't know what the percentage is because we're just starting to kind of balance it out, but certainly it would be a very high percentage. But I'm also realizing that all of these, just as you mentioned, your other background and interest is science. For me, it's been meditation and Buddhism and spiritual practice. And all of these interviews, dozens of interviews that we had before February 1st in different stages of production, we're now starting to roll those out again and to And I realized that that balance is needed. And I've recorded a special introduction to those interviews saying that it's important to remember that Myanmar is not just a place where these bad things are happening, but it's this diverse society and history where there's so much else to explore. And the gift and the teaching of meditation is something that has inspired the world over in the last generation. And so to be able to go back into those and balance it out, while also in the introduction also referencing that this is not meant to be an escape. It's not meant to be a spiritual bypass of avoiding the news, and that we need to keep this in our minds and hearts and be aware. But it's a way to balance it, so that's not the only thing that we're doing. So that's interesting with what you're pursuing as well. I'm wondering also, in the interviews that you've done, all the guests and the topics that you've covered, what particularly stands out? What would be an example of a guest or a topic where you learn something really surprising, or you some level of understanding developed that was very exciting in the podcast format? What's a memory of a past episode you've done that you think really highlights the work you're trying to do?
Okay. There was one episode which I did with Myan. He's a famous singer and record producer from Myanmar. Maybe you have heard of him. He and I talked about this how to say other beings, ET, UFO, and that episode is very interesting. I've never how to say met a person that I think most that's my impression. Maybe I was wrong, because I always thought of like celebrities and singers and actors, like, oh, they're just I don't want to shit on people, but for me, well, when I thought they only care about their arts and their audience and what they put out. But when talk to him, he has a lot of real actual knowledge of how these things, and he talked about a lot of stuff, that's when I understand. Okay, because um most of the artists before him I talked to, they just know their stuff, but when they step out of what they are creating, what they are doing with their life, uh and they don't really have a different perspective, like, oh, okay, this I don't want to use like how to say, the conspiracy theories, but I'm interested in more like those science stuff, and UFO, and how the world actually works. He has the same interest. Like, okay, these people, they are like, they may be a shadow government, but that's kind of a conspiracy topics. But when you actually look at all the things that happen during like this 2 or 3 years, you will get more suspicion, like, okay, maybe someone or some hidden organization is doing some bad stuff to people. That's more of the more of like a uh, uh like thought of strength that I usually now I more tend to have, seeing all these pandemic and all these vaccines stuff, all these stuff going on, and so yeah. But the that episode was really I feel like I wasn't alone, because
Wow.
somebody have the same thinking, maybe same interpretation of some of the Buddhist thoughts. Uh, uh, he also shared those kind of uh, thinking. And the last one I did just before yesterday, I think. It hasn't released, from that podcast also I learned that uh, I know words have power, but when you uh, some people like really take how to say some, the words democracy and federals are like really taboo for the military people. From that episode I learned that okay, there are ways that we can exchange the same idea without using those words. That's what I learned. Yeah, that was really cool, I think. Yeah.
That's great. So I know another topic that you're interested in, both personally, professionally, as well as on the podcast that you get into, is mental health. Can you share how you became interested in the subject of mental health?
Okay. Psychology was the first top subject that I interested in because, as I mentioned in the at the start of the podcast, I talked to because when you start your talent management or you production, um, you talk to these talents and they have their own issues, and uh, maybe you already know this, but most of the artists they have some kind of issue. That's what I want to say because uh, their creative force come from somewhere. Uh, how to say? Maybe I don't want to say dark or pain, but yeah, something like a sadness is more of a driving force in their creative process. And then I find it really fascinating. It's very interesting, uh, because and then I read a lot of stuff, and then I try to uh, how to say give advice. And psychology was the main subject that I interested in when I start doing talent management and everything. And also, when I doing making producing a music video or anything, I read a lot of marketing books. Also, marketing is kind of like a psychology. It's just part of psychology because they explore what uh, mm, makes humans like your product or your song or whatever more. Yeah. That's why I was thinking, oh, okay, every marketing, everything, these human resource, it's really psychology. So and then I read psychology books. I listened to psychology podcasts, lectures on YouTube. And then when pandemic hit, uh, uh, one of my friend, she's a doctor, and then she knows that I'm interested in. I wanted to help people. She said, "Oh, you can volunteer at this organization called Open Heart, and they are helping traumatized people from different backgrounds. So and they gave me training, psychological first aid training, and then yeah, from there I started more get more into mental health and with my friend she, from Singapore, we started our own uh, mental health service platform. Yeah, yeah, that's why that is how I get into mental health. And yeah, mostly I'm more interested in psychology. But it's very interesting because you are interested in Buddhism, right? Buddhism also teach you a lot about your mind and how you think. Uh, that's why I'm always interested in Buddhism and teachings of Buddha. So it's everything is related. It's really how to say I was a fan. I am a fan of Stoicism. So everything is like you have to internal focus is more important than you focusing on outside. That's why I have this kind of huge interest in that field. Yeah.
And mental health in general, it's a sensitive subject anywhere in the world. I'm sure that Myanmar is no exception to that. How is mental health regarded in Myanmar, generally speaking?
When you say mental health, they think you have some kind of disorder, or bluntly, how to say, they think you're just crazy. They have there's stigma. Really, that's very hard. And people think like, oh, having a therapist or seeing a counselor or those stuff. They think, oh, you can just talk to your friends or you can just talk to your parents or whatever. But uh, now people are getting to understand it and how to take care of themselves. There are a lot of services and other uh, a lot of mental health services have uh, popped up during COVID. Also, the coup. Yeah, so there is a huge stigma, but we are getting through. We are all the mental health community is trying to uh, give the message it's okay, and it's you don't have to be like have a disorder or crazy or really suicidal to go see a therapist or counselor. Now people are getting the message, which is kind of the silver lining during this you know uh, this period. Yeah.
And I was intrigued to hear in your interview on the podcast in Zagawine that you found it much more difficult for Burmese men to seek some kind of help help with mental issues than Burmese women. Why do you think that's so?
We have this like, oh, Yaoja, how to say, it's like men are not supposed to cry or complain, that kind of teaching from our parents and our society. Man has to be tough. So if life gets hard, you get through, you bite through it. That's the mentality as a Burmese man have, the society has. So yeah, if you like, if you cry, like if you're a boy and you cry a lot, they were just, oh, you're a boy, you shouldn't cry. The kind of messages are preventing the men from seeking help. Yeah.
Mm, right. And so that's kind of tapping into this these gender roles and how society might create certain or encourage certain kind of roles from different genders that then people feel a pressure to conform to. And this boys don't cry would be an example of one of those kind of gender roles. And I think that in different countries and cultures, even the ideal form of what we would call masculinity or femininity
Mhm.
would differ according to those kinds of assumptions and ideals of those societies. And so within Burmese culture, and well, of course, Myanmar is a very diverse place. So you're as I understand, a Bamar Buddhist,
Yeah.
and in looking specifically within the constructs of Burmese Buddhism, how would you describe how the ideal form of masculinity is characterized in a Burmese Buddhist conception?
Uh, I think our society is more of a traditional society than Buddhist society. To be honest, that's what I feel, because all those traditions are like put mixed with Buddhism to feel like you have to follow those traditions. Actually, those are just traditions. Like, oh, women are not allowed in some places, in some pagodas. And that's the Bajo Seattle also said those are just tradition, not the teachings of Buddhism. Uh, I,
Right,
I think
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So I think more it's not about the religion. It's about the traditions that we have and the teachings, the history books that we have written. The teachings in the schools and the more of a tradition. On if I have to blame it, I will blame more on the traditions and the teaching and the how to say the stories that we spread through our generation through words. Not just written down history, just with the words, stories. Oh, certain king, certain hero, certain uh, man in the past act this way, so you have to act this way. That's that kind. Yeah, I think that's more of it, and then than on the religion of Buddhism, because if you really deep in dive into Buddhism, there's no like gender, and maybe because it was back in India like 3,000 years ago, so there may be some, but at the heart of the compassion, how to say uh, can I like metta, mudita, sedana, and yuna? That's the four main four main things that you have to use in your daily life to that's more of more aligned with teachings of Buddha than having like poem like misogynistic. The word pong shide
Yeah.
and Burmese,
Yeah.
right? That stuff for me, that's more of a tradition. Uh, not on the religion. Maybe some some exaggeration from some, maybe a word or few, or from text from Buddhism, but personally, I don't think it's on the religion. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think that and that's why I was curious about the looking at Burmese Buddhist constructions, because this is looking at not so much what the religion is telling us, but the way that the religion has played out in modern society and culture to be able to make different constructs and different cultural norms than you would find 2,500 years ago in the Buddha's day in India, which is normal across any spiritual or religious teachings that spreads. That's the human cultural part that takes these teachings and integrates them with the features of their society. And so
Yeah.
what I was curious about in looking at the way that 21st century Burmese Buddhist society has adapted those teachings into their lived society and made meaning of it, so understanding that this is not a pure distillation of the original teachings of the Buddha, but it's rather an influence or an adaptation of how they're taking certain parts and interpreting certain parts to fit their own intended contemporary meaning. With that in mind, how would one begin to understand the idealized form of masculinity and what a man should be within the current society?
Okay, it's like, what do you mean is the expectation of masculinity or man from the large majority of society?
Yeah,
Is it the okay?
yeah, it could be characterized that way. Yeah,
Uh, okay. Yeah, we have as a Burmese man. Yeah, not just a Burmese man. As a man, I think in general, right? You are expected to provide for your family, and also in our tradition, there's like the elders is like the father of the family. So when if you are elders among your brothers and sisters, you have to take care of your younger brothers, younger sister, plus your family. That's those kind of expectations are placed upon Burmese men, I think, since young. And yeah, and if you cannot do it, you you are seen as a failure, and also you have to how to say if you cannot show like a feminine side uh, of your personality. uh, Now it's changing, like maybe during the 5 to 7 years it started to shift and started to change, but uh, now I'm a over 30 years old man. So half more than half of my life I experienced this uh how to say this expectations from society, and trying to live up. I'm not saying you shouldn't live up to those expectation, but uh it's okay to fail sometimes, you know. It's not your, it's not sometimes if you cannot uh if you fail, you just fail. You have to, the society has to be more forgiving, more lovely, and sometimes you just make a mistake and you are labeled, you are just seen as a failure through your whole life. That's I think that's not okay, I think. um and as a man, you, as I said before, the only, you have to be the breadwinner of your family, and if you are the eldest, you have to look after your brothers and sisters under you. Yeah, those are the main things that I
Mm.
see. And also uh, more of a, how to say, if you but sometimes when you married, right, you they just work, do business, they just put food on the table, and then they neglect the whole other responsibilities, like feeding your wife, uh, having a good marriage, building a good marriage. They just forgot. Oh, if I if I walk and put money, that's that's it. I don't think in a marriage. Of course, if you like, make money, that's good. But there are other responsibilities as well. Uh, Sometimes men are stuck there. Burmese men, most, I don't want to say most, but yeah, a lot of men are just like, okay, I'm the breadwinner. I put food on the table so I can do whatever I like. That's not true.
Yeah, that's great, and it's great to be bringing that sensibility into having these honest conversations, both on a podcast as well as behind the scenes in counseling sessions, and to be helping people of all stripes and backgrounds to be able to improve on what they can become. Looking at mental health overall, not just in terms of gender, but part of trying to deal with topics related to mental health is this ability to be honest, to be vulnerable, communicative, open, even perhaps especially with those topics that are uncomfortable or sensitive. What do you find are the dynamics at play when trying to discuss these difficult or painful topics within Burmese culture and society?
Um, yeah, they when you come to therapy session or counseling session, I think they are prepared to talk about those things. So I don't see a lot of pushback when the conversation or what they are opening up about leads to those uncomfortable topics. Yeah, they are open, and when we have this, uh, mm, a safe place to talk, yeah, it's okay. Everybody is like open and can talk about it. Like, if you want to talk about abuse or sex or addiction or whatever, they are open to talk. Yeah, because you just don't jump into those hard topics in the first session, right? So maybe a few sessions go through, they have a trust in their counselor or therapist. Yeah, it's easy to talk about those hard topics. It's not hard at all. Yeah.
That's great. Another division I wonder about is we talked about male female. What about city versus countryside? Working with people in more urban versus more rural environments. What are you finding in the reception and the readiness according to whether they live in a more urban or rural setting?
Sadly, more uh, how to say, the people from rural areas needs mental health care more than city, I think, because in urban area, to be honest, when you have how to say, a little bit of money, or you have uh spending power, people use that to like use it to have a little bit of uh how to say, enjoyment or happiness. They can distract their miseries. But in rural areas, there's no way, to no way they can afford distraction or more harsh. When you are living in more harsh situation, more circumstances, they seek help. But the problem is, um uh okay, how to say, the problem is they seek help, but sometimes fees and charges for therapy or counseling sessions are a bit more of a burden for them. They really want to improve their life, but yeah, we that's why we are trying to give free sessions like Saturday, every Friday and Saturday. I try to give free sessions. And Um, yeah, I think in rural area, because of the current situation, political stuff, they need more help than city areas. Because as I mentioned, people who living in city areas, they can afford, so they can have better quality healthcare, better entertainment, better living standards. So they are like a little more reluctant to come to therapy or counseling sessions in rural areas, and they they are more open and educated on mental health. Yeah, especially the Mandalay from Mandalay, Taungji, those areas, they are more interested in this than Yangon, I think. In Yangon,
That's really
people,
interesting.
Yangon, they just come to like psychiatrists or mental health only when they have like big issues like suicidal
Mm,
thoughts, or
mm,
you having a serious depression disorder, those kind of stuff. Only then they come. Oh, in Mandalay and other stuff, they when they really feel like uh, they are more interested in it, because uh, according to my client database, and also the people interacting from in through our page, I see, yeah, in those area, people are more interested and interacting with the mental health service providers. And engagement on Facebook also, I see like that. Because in Yangon, people act like, "Oh, I'm okay, I'm fine." That's kind of Yangon style.
mm, That's really interesting. It's interesting to get your professional background and opinion on what you're seeing there. And we're talking now about the value of addressing mental health, regardless of background or gender or location. Yet you're even beyond this. You're working on mental health issues at a time of real social upheaval and revolution. And so again, we have a bit of a shift in, I guess actually we could say 3 different periods of recent Myanmar history, just the last few years. The
Yeah.
normal, you can call it the so-called normal times, and then the pandemic, and then the coup. And these are bringing very different challenges of facing mental health, and both in terms of the issues that are coming up among the people, as well as the ways to respond to those issues by the professionals. So looking at the past year since the coup, what do you feel the focus needs to be? What are the issues that you're seeing arising from the people in terms of the absolute terrors and traumas that they're now dealing with?
Yeah. People through most the topics are trauma, grief, and also uh, some kind of depression. Yeah, widespread depression is maybe going on. But the thing is, in Myanmar, we don't have research on this mental health topic. Not enough research, not enough organizations are focusing on it. We uh, only private sectors is working on that is what I feel, how I feel. But I don't know. Maybe they are out there. Maybe some INGO or NGO organization that they are working on it, or other government organization, or maybe working on it. But what I feel is uh, there's not enough research, and we need to do more research. Like what are the main issues, like by demographics, by areas. That's what I feel. We need more data and research. Yeah, if we have that,
Hmm,
we can focus on. Oh, we have to which area is urgent, and we have to focus on it.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, because we don't have enough data, we don't know.
Right. Right, and that's a question I was wondering as well. I've there have been several mental health professionals and even organizations in the U.S. that have reached out to me asking what they could do in their capacity to help, and I honestly just don't know what to say. The culture and the language are different. There's the connections and problems with internet, and the in trying to just administer something. And so I'm wondering for you if there's certain volunteers, mental health professionals in the US that are looking to support in some way. You're saying now that even you don't have a complete idea of the landscape and the needs, given the surveys that aren't able to be done. For if you were to respond to someone out there, even listening to this, that had a background in mental health and wanted to help, is there anything that can be done now? Is there any role that professional volunteers could play, even with the imperfect state of knowing what the context is, what the needs are, what the people are going through? What role could an outside volunteer play right now?
Hmm. Uh, outside, you can uh, you can, how to say, yeah, you can just go to that's what we just like what we are doing. We just you just started you just start your own maybe volunteer service organization, and started accepting clients and looking talking to them. That's just have to, I think that's my, I think immediate thing thought. But um yeah, to conduct more research and surveys, that's the most needed area right now, other than training the professionals, giving training to the uh, professionals. And yeah, other than giving training, research and surveys, I think that's the most important part they should focus on.
That could be a possibility. We can talk later about some of these professionals, if they what it would look like for them to give some kind of training seminar to local professionals. I think that's a good idea. How about the NUG, the National Unity Government? Is there anything that they're doing that's addressing the mental health needs?
Yeah, they have hotlines and stuff. Yeah, I've seen it. But I don't uh, uh I don't remember what's the name. It's some kind of under uh health or maybe woman uh on ministry, or the two ministry combine and have a hotline. Yeah, they are also doing something uh on that front. Yeah, this mental health and psychosocial support network. Yeah, that is they have office here before, but I don't know they still have it or not. Yeah, it's was led by UN. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that is UNFEA have this mental health psychosocial support network. That is led by UNFEA program.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is something you can check on.
Looking at the PDF specifically, those that are in the People's Defense Force, I'm sure that they're facing a certain amount of conflict and trauma and difficulty beyond the normal human experience. Have you connected with anyone that has joined the PDFs, and do you have any sense of what kind of mental health issues they're facing and what support they need?
Okay, no, not from PDF, but I have okay, I have someone from the other side that defected, so that is
Mm.
more interesting. PDF, like my um other friends, other counselor friends, they have clients, but I don't really know. But what I experienced, what I had was someone that defected uh, from Tamador. Yeah,
Oh, and
that
what came
is,
up?
yeah, that is more interesting because uh, I'm more interested in the other side. The our side, I know what I can guess. You know what they are going through. But talking to someone from what you call your enemy or the other side, it's more interesting, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's more challenging for a counselor because I can't hold any judgment, or I can't hold uh any judgment on him, because I have to be very open when we go into sessions. That's very that's a very how to say, interesting experience for me.
So, what did you learn in talking to him?
Uh, I learned about mm, more on how their institution works, and yeah, that institution is very sad inside. Yeah, that's very sad. Well, for me, it's very sad because they are built upon fear, and mm, they are built upon fear and exploiting your insecurity. That's and also uh yeah, it's like they are purposely making a circle of violence, inside their own institution. Yeah, violence, fears, insecurities. So that kind of institution, they are not based on trust. They are not based on love, or they are not based on compassion or anything. They are just based on violence, fears, and insecurities all around. So yeah, it's very sad.
So, how hard was it for you as a mental health professional to look at these? So, you're dealing with a client who had grown up and been formed, had been shaped emotionally, mentally, psychologically from these intentionally destructive forces. And you're trying to, first of all, understand them and then try to, reverse the process and bring him out of that destructive mindset that he's been led to be in. So, as a professional, how did you go about trying to firstly understand the dynamics he was operating in, and then try to bring him out to some kind of daylight, try to reverse the processes and effects of what of these mental conditions he'd been taught to live under?
First, you have to like as a counselor, you have to be very open and you have to give him space, and try to show that it's sometimes it's okay to how to say try to show that there are people that understand him, or and not on his side as like an ideology or whatever, but emotionally, I support you, and that kind of stuff. First you have to understand and hold him in a place where he is not judged, and then you from that place you try to uh, give him examples of how to treat people with compassion, because uh, since joining the training school and stuff, they are their life um, is just like I said before, is never ending violence and fears, and how to say backstabbing, all those kind of bad stuff, Um, so you just have to show him there's some good out there, because he or she doesn't haven't experienced those emotion or uh, those feelings in a very long time. So you have to what we call is reparenting in counseling. That's the way I took with him. You know.
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's also quite challenging to just to hear about the pain and the trauma that someone has been intentionally put under, and it also gives insight into what we're finding overall in the country and how they're being trained, and then how they're responding with the Tamada in general, how they're responding in this conflict of trying to instill the whole country in that kind of violent thinking and destructive patterns. I know that you've also been concerned about not just about where we're at now in Burmese society, but where we're going to go after, assuming that there's victory and that and that the democratic movement is able to win, that what the new Myanmar is going to look like, and looking beyond that point, looking beyond the point that we are now, assuming that the democratic movement is successful. What do you think needs to happen with mental health issues? What kinds of issues do you think are going to be there to be treated and resolved, and what infrastructure needs to be set up to be able to not just administer support from what people have suffered with the pandemic and the coup, but also with the prior to that, some of the overall issues that you find within society that need to be treated and administered?
On mental health particularly, I think the stigma needs to that's the work of the professionals. From the side of professional, we need to uh, fight off the stigma that's been in the society for a long time. Like, oh, if you seek help, you are crazy, or if you seek help, you are weak. That's not. We have to. We have to get rid of the stigma. I think that's really important. And also the second thing is we need to have more research, more data, more surveys, those kind of stuff. Without those stuff, for as a citizen, I don't even know what's the suicide rate in my country. Don't you think it's crazy?
Yeah, yeah. So moving on, I want to talk about a related topic, and this is the final subject to look at in this interview. You've brought it up a couple times already, but look at it a bit in depth, and that's a background of Buddhist teachings in Myanmar, meditation specifically. So before getting into that, I just want to know, personally speaking, what is your own background with Buddhism and with meditation? And if you have a meditation practice, what different traditions or teachers have you learned that from?
Um, First, my teacher in meditation is my grandmother.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was like 6, 7. She teach me how to like just focus on your breath. That's a basic that we that I've been taught since I was young. And later, I not very long ago, like maybe 2 years ago, I find the uh, vipassana, looking at your body, and like focusing more on your body, and then I find mindfulness. Yeah, mindfulness is more. I prefer mindfulness meditation than just focusing on your breath. Mindfulness is a little bit more different. But traditionally, I think mindfulness is what is called is Tadipata. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure, but what I feel is a mindfulness meditation is similar or same to Tadipata, what as traditional Buddhists would call. So yeah, it's more of like you just aware of what you are doing every time. That's what that's my um, interpretation of mindfulness. You just have to be aware of how every time, like in every second, you have to be aware. Your like your hands movement, your feelings, what you're thinking. How you moving. What are you saying? Those you just have to be. That's why I prefer mindfulness. My background, not much. I'm traditional Buddhist. I read a lot of Buddhist, more of like myths and legends, like stories when I was young. After that, yeah, I moved into the practical parts of Buddhism, like how to meditate, and also I'm interested in learning about what we call a Abhidhamma. I don't know what it will be called in English. And I'm also interested in that part too because it teaches you about your mind. There's a uh, how, that's Abhidhamma is more of Buddhist psychology. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't. It's I know what I believe, and I don't want to like. If I say too much, maybe I sound wrong, and people will be like, "Okay, he's spreading misinformation about Buddhism." That's so. For me personally, this is just my personal opinion, and I may be wrong. So yeah, um, yeah, what I like is those things, the Metta Guna Sedana Mudita. That's Brahmazo Leba. That's what I'm more attracted to now these days because as a mental health professional also those things are more practical when you are dealing with clients or whoever. You know, if you have compassion, love, and uh, Sedana and Mudita, those kind of things, it's more practical than yeah. Meditation is good for you. It's more like your personal spiritual journey. But the thing I mentioned, the Brahmasutia Liba, is like how you should treat everyone. So nowadays I use for my personal spiritual journey. I do mindfulness meditation, and dealing with outside world, I use that Bimazutiari, but yeah, that's that's how I going through this period of my life right now. Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned just to unpack a couple words, the Burmese pronunciation Wipatana for listeners that are meditators. Vipassana is what was that? What's the Burmese pronunciation again?
Satipatthana.
Right.
Yeah.
So for those foreign meditators, just to unpack that, Satipatthana is how they'll know that. So insight meditation, it's also called, and you reference moving on from just observing the breath to this insight Vipassana method according to the Satipatthana. This is one of the suttas of the Buddha. Is there a particular tradition or lineage you follow, like Mahasi or Mogok or Goenka or something else? Or where have you learned this?
More of a Mahasi way, I think, more aligned with, because I get teachings from different sources. First, how to say, when we samatha, when you are doing samatha, you try to have more samadhi when you while you are focusing on your breath. It's more of a samatha way, I think. And then vipassana way is more gentle and more, how to say, it's more overall. Yeah, I think that's what I feel. It's like a more generalized and more complete, not complete, but it's like you look, it's like a bird eyes view. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not. uh, yeah, yeah, that's what I feel like when you are trying to just focus on your breath. When you have the willpower to just focus on your breath, and when you move it to other parts of your body, you will explore more, I think. Yeah, that's it's more aligned with Mahasi, I think, because now what I do is I focus on my how to say this uh on my stomach. When you breathe in, you follow the whole breath, and when you feel your lungs grow, your stomach expand, and when you breathe out, the whole things move again. That's more of like a Mahasi way, I think. Yeah.
Right. So you've been kind of self-taught with that and being able to explore there's so many teachers and traditions with all kinds of literature
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
one's able
I
to
read
learn.
books, and I ask. When I go into monkhood, I ask the theaters from the monastery, and they also teach me. Yeah, I read books, I read online. I try to learn. Yeah,
That's great.
because
That's great.
because mm, most of the I have a lot of other friends that practice meditation. One of my friends, he go to Pa, he go to Mahasi, he go to every meditation center. And yeah, also from him I learned a lot. I asked him, okay, he explained, okay, this is Pa way, this is Mahasi way, this is Sonon way,
Right.
but yeah, and also from books as well. Yeah.
And how about this relationship between meditation and mental health? You referenced this a bit before, and I think that in what's interesting to me is that in the West, you've heard this talked about for some time. Psychologists and psychiatrists that have been exploring how meditation can play a role in some of the mental health practices they were administering in a professional context. I feel like you might be looking at this from the opposite point of view, whereas they might be coming with mental health issues first, and where meditation fits in, being you living in a society where meditation and Buddhist thinking is much more the norm, and mental health is more of a new consideration and understanding coming, which is the opposite of what we find in the West, you're looking at this relationship similarly, but perhaps from a different starting point. So where do you find the intersection between mental health and Buddhist meditation?
Yeah, that's very interesting. What I think is, uh, I grew up with, as you mentioned, in a Buddhist society. I also have, uh, thanks to my grandma, and I read a lot of Buddhist uh, books since I was young. What I find is every psychology, or at the end, it's just all what they are saying from Western, psychology, the subject. Everything has set in Buddhism for so many years. You know, it's just repackaging the same. That's what I feel like. Oh, okay, this is how they communicate this idea. This this is how they package psychology, package the same concept in different way, different language, different you know types of words and whatever. But the concept nearly identical for me. It's like uh because now, like, oh, when you try to find happiness in your life, you have to be you have to be compassionate. You have to give out love. Those type of stuff are already in Buddhism. And also, if you want to find peace, you have to look inside, and you have to. All those things are always. Buddha always teach to look inside you to find answers. Psychology also say that way. You have to. You have to. All your all your behaviors are your internalized thinkings. So if you look into yourself and dig deeper into yourself, you will find, oh, this is hurting me. This is oh, this event was what caused my trauma, and that's why my behavior is in a certain way right now. Those, if you meditate, you have these thoughts and experience. If you just meditate also, because at the end of the day, meditation is also looking inside. When therapists and counselors try to help clients, you have to look inside. It's the same thing for me. Yeah.
Right. Another thing I wonder about that, looking kind of these different perspectives of looking in or looking out, is that as Buddhist meditation has come to the West, there's been quite a discussion about on one hand, the meditation practices being something that's therapeutic, that's universal, that is just simply mind-body connection, and in many ways is rejecting or perhaps repurposing the understanding of Buddhism as not a religion, but as a kind of yoga, a good practice for the mind and body. And some in the academic field, this has been known as kind of modern Buddhism or Protestant Buddhism that has been repurposed it. And I think there are many practitioners that would call themselves, they might call themselves secular Buddhists or Buddhist atheists, or they might differentiate that they are a Vipassana meditator, but they are not a Buddhist, or they follow the teachings, but they're not involved in the Buddhist religion. As someone who was raised Buddhist, and where the practice that you underwent in meditation was part of a more holistic understanding of this totality of the Buddhist teachings, with, we could use the word religion or not, but what's your thought on how that's being kind of separated and carved out or repurposed or used for as a separate function or activity, or even in combination with mental health? Do you see this as something that is going along with overall teachings and religion, or do you see Buddhist meditation as a separate practice, which can really just be taken out and then applied over a wide variety of different contexts and audiences? What's your thought about that?
Okay. If you practice meditation uh, long enough, you will see the same things, and you will become a Buddhist. That's maybe
Mm.
that's how I feel like it. Uh, you will understand why. If you don't know any of the Buddhist texts or Buddhist scriptures or Buddhist teaching, and you practice meditation, maybe you take method from like Goenga or uh, Mahasi, and you just practice this. Uh, what a big part of Buddhism, and you just practice meditation, and you don't need to know a lot about uh, the how do you say once you the sila or the sila uh, you have to abide by when you become a monk. I don't think those are necessary for you to practice meditation and gain benefit from it. But if you practice long enough and you you go on that journey, and you at a certain point you will become Buddhist. That's how I feel like. Even though you are not part of the religion or the religion institution of Buddhism, you you will become a follower of Buddha. That's what I feel like. Yeah. What I want to do is to uh, Myanmar and the Burmese people need as much support as other people around the world who are being oppressed.
Mm.
That's why I want to share to the international community and who are living, who are maybe different, who doesn't speak Burmese and who are not from Myanmar.
Mhm.
Yeah, we need as much support as other people who are being oppressed, like
Absolutely.
Palestinians,
Yep.
Ukrainians. We need as much same support as them. That's what I want to say. I don't want to like blame
Mm.
or point fingers, but
Mm.
yeah, yes,
I I don't mind blaming and pointing fingers. I think that I think that it's an open question. Why is this being ignored? And not certainly not by everyone, but there. This is such a remarkable moment of an entire young generation leading the way, and the rest of the country following, that is bringing out such progressive values and espousing democratic principles that the world over, at least the democratic world, is supposedly in support of, and the level of support and engagement and the role that some of these bigger international bodies have played have just been absolutely shameful, and I don't know why that is, and it's so frustrating. And I think when we look at the parallel situations in Ukraine, and I understand Ukraine is really not a parallel story. This is Russia is a much bigger danger to the world's stability than the generals are. This is not a civil war or a military takeover. This is actually an invasion of one sovereign power. So there's many other things. So I understand that these situations are not exactly the same and they can't be
yeah,
compared similarly. At the same time, there's this outpouring of international support just from celebrities, from people on the ground, from humanitarian assistance, people that are offering to help with medicine or defense or any number of things that simply like we've never seen in Myanmar, and it's frankly devastating. And I think that these, although the situations are not equal, and we have to keep saying that, at the same time, the solidarity of the world that's shown towards Ukrainians is, and how Myanmar has just all but been forgotten, I think has to be examined. And I think that I think that skin color has got to play a role. I think that because there's Ukrainians have the right color of skin as people as those in Western countries that they can identify with and that they see, and that simply because there's a different skin color in what has been going on in Myanmar, I think that it's somehow less of a consciousness. I think that racism has to be playing a role in why this support is not being there. I think perhaps as well, there's a sense that I think people don't really know Myanmar's history that well, and so the average person doesn't necessarily understand the democratic transition and the struggles for democracy. And I think there could just be a sense of like, oh yeah, that Myanmar isn't that a place where bad things happen, and okay, bad things are continuing to happen, and so nothing new here. This is just kind of an unfortunate part of the world, and that's where the podcasts that we're doing are trying to break down that narrative and show more of the dynamic history and what the democratic movement is doing, and to inform on a greater level, because I think that for those who haven't been to certain parts of the world and don't know people from those worlds and aren't familiar with the people or the history, that it can just be a sense of like, oh yeah, things are often bad there, and they're bad there now. So that's really bad, and it's I'm sorry to hear, but move on with one's life. Whereas with Ukraine, it really shakes one up, and there's just a level of support and a measure of solidarity we haven't seen. But regardless of the reason why, it's absolutely devastating, and I don't understand it. And some of the things that Burmese have been asking for so long, some of the levels of support that still haven't come, they came within hours with Ukraine. And my only hope is that somehow the democratic movement in Myanmar can find a way to carry itself on the coattails of the support for Ukraine. This is not a competition. This is not, there's not a jealousy, and certainly Ukrainians are going through absolute hell. No one wishes upon anyone what they're going through, and any measure of support and solidarity with them is so important. We definitely stand by them and their sovereignty and their democratic movement, and there's no sense of proclaiming the otherwise. It's more that the support that they're receiving, why are we not receiving it in Myanmar, and what can we do to try to follow up with what's been successful for them, and try to raise the awareness, the attention, the support, the aid that can come here as well, and see this as happening in humanity, that this is that whatever the skin color, whatever the geography, if you really look into these are a people that are shouting and trying to claim their democracy and their rights, and the world can't simply stand by and let these go into silence. That there are actions that we can do on an individual or a wider level that need to be done. So I think that, yeah, I have no problem pointing fingers and calling out blame for the more things that could be done than aren't happening.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid is when you have this how to say, there's principles, and that you support certain values, certain principle, and like say we have we all the Burmese people are asking support believe in the democratic process, the values of human rights. But when you are not receive the same reaction or support or whatever, uh, people might turn cynical. That's what I'm afraid. People will get cynical and, oh, these are just words. Then what to do?
Yeah, that's where we're at now. What to do?
Yeah, that's yeah. If you, then people will be more cynical, and our country will be more of a cesspool than right now.
Well, let's hope that's not the case. Let's hope that this conversations like these in some small way bring an awareness and a focus to what's going on, and people like you and so many others that are doing what they can to spread the word and to not, this is not 1988. It's not 2007. This is a completely different moment that is building on and culminating from those other moments. And it's an important time.
And yeah, and the thing is that the military is representing they are using this very how to say, very Buddhism, which is very peaceful and which is very very therapeutic, whatever. It's very this is a very peaceful religion, and they are making it seems like a violent one. That's really crazy, you know. And if this stick, if this stick, it will harm the you know, the Buddhism. Yeah, it will put a bad name on Buddhism. That's really bad.
Well, it already has.
Yeah, that's really sad, and it's not cool.
No, it's not, and it's this is already something that has to be contended with. And, you know, I was, when this whole thing started in the 2010s, I was working on a guidebook for meditators, for foreign practitioners coming to practice in different traditions in Myanmar. And so I was kind of immersed in the recent history of Burmese Buddhism, of like Ledi Sayadaw and Mogok and Mahasi and Sun Lun, and telling these stories and just trying to understand who these teachers were and what they taught and what their lives were, just this historical kind of appreciation for meditators who wanted to go and visit some of the historic sites of, you know, where was Ledi Sayadaw born, and where did Webu Sayadaw reach enlightenment, and, you know, where did Mahasi Sayadaw have his first teachings, and just visiting these places and trying to find these physical locations and then tell the stories with them. And as I was doing this, this is when the Rohingya crisis broke out, and when Mabatha and 969, and I actually wasn't really following or aware of what was happening, because I was so much more living in the past, and I was in rural Burmese monasteries at the time, researching those places. And it was just interesting and tragic for me that the stories I was telling were the same. They were anecdotes about the lives of these great monks, Ledi and Mogok and Mahasi and Sun Lun and etc. And I was telling the same stories, and yet they were, over the course of months and years, they were being received differently. So, whereas before they were being received as from a general audience of like, oh, this is this beautiful tradition of monkhood and renunciation and peace, and these are these former practitioners who taught these values, and how wonderful this is. The comments started to shift to like, well, you know, these kind of stories you're telling, they're this kind of fantasy world, and they're separated from, you know, what Buddhism really is and what the monkhood's actually doing, and there's this kind of divergence between what these beautiful saintly stories that you're telling and how the way that the different monks are actually today are causing these kind of problems and harm to the world and to peoples. And it was so confusing for me, because I wasn't really following the stories at the time, because I was more immersed in the research. And yet, even though the stories I was telling was the same because of the current situation, they were just being received and understood completely differently. So, you know, in real time in front of my eyes, I was seeing how these beautiful stories and dynamicism that was to be told were being polluted, soiled, corrupted by the current practices. So, you know, it really has already stained the name of Buddhism and Burmese Buddhism and the Sangha. Things change. This script and this narrative can be changed again. So it's not like this is just a state that we have to accept being in, but permanently. But it is a state that it is a characterization that I think does apply today, and unfortunately.
Yeah, that's very sad. Yes. All right. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this show. I realize that this is an enormously difficult time for many people who love Myanmar these days, myself included. and at times we might despair that there's anything at all we can do to stop the horrors unfolding there. However, just the mere fact of staying informed is helping to bear continued witness and keep a focus on this issue when much of the international media has moved on. And the only way that we can do our part in continuing to provide this content is through the support of generous donors, listeners like yourselves. If you found this episode of value and would like to see more shows like it, please consider making a donation to support our efforts. Both monthly pledges or one-time donations are equally appreciated. Thank you deeply in advance. If you would like to join in our mission to support those in Myanmar who are being impacted by the military coup, we welcome your contribution in any form, currency, or transfer method. Your donation will go to support a wide range of humanitarian missions, aiding those local communities who need it most. Donations are directed to such causes as the Civil Disobedience Movement, CDM, families of deceased victims, internally displaced person, IDP camps, food for impoverished communities, military defection campaigns, undercover journalists, monasteries and nunneries, education initiatives, the purchasing of protective equipment and medical supplies, COVID relief, and much more. We also make sure that our donation fund supports a diverse range of religious and ethnic groups across the country. We invite you to visit our website to learn more about past projects as well as upcoming needs. You can give a general donation or earmark your contribution for a specific activity or project you would like to support. Perhaps even something you heard about in this very episode. All of this humanitarian aid work is carried out by our nonprofit mission, Better Burma. Any donation you give on our Insight Myanmar website is directed towards this fund. Alternatively, you can also visit the Better Burma website, betterburma.org. That's betterburma.org, and donate directly there. In either case, your donation goes to the same cause, and both websites accept credit cards. You can also give via PayPal by going to paypal.me/betterburma. Additionally, we take donations through Patreon, Venmo, GoFundMe, and Cash App. Simply search Better Burma on each platform and you'll find our account. You can also visit either the Insight Myanmar or Better Burma websites for specific links to those respective accounts, or email us at info@betterburma.org. If you'd like to give it another way, please contact us. Thank you so much for your kind consideration and support.